Well, Dream Theater is back with another live album. Their first one in 6 years. The last one, I believe, was Breaking the Fourth Wall, live from the Boston Opera House in 2014. So, I mean, they've had a little bit of time to kind of mull things over, what worked and what didn't. And we are also celebrating two things: the release of Distance Over Time, which was the album they released last year, as well as the 20th anniversary of Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. This was actually also the last concert that I went to with Dream Theater, and it was one of my favorites. So what does it sound like on audio form? Well, let's find out. Distant Memories live in London by Dream Theater. So Dream Theater, I don't think we really need an introduction from these guys. Forefathers of the progressive metal movement. Outside of like Queensryche or Fate's Warning, or if we're going as far back as like, I don't know, Rush. These guys were one of the first on the scene in terms of that progressive metal movement that then sparked a generation after generation of individuals carrying that progressive metal torch. One of the things that I love about Dream Theater is the live performances and the energy that they're able to bring in a live performance. I mean, John Petrucci on, I almost said drums, on lead guitar is still able to shred and hit every single one of the notes. Like, the man is a machine in that sense, followed up by the lead keyboardist of Jordan Rudess. The two play off one another perfectly. John Ming on lead bass is still able just to get into his zone and really see it through to the end. And then we have the new drummer that's, I shouldn't even say new, he's been with the band now for almost 10 years, Mike Mangini. I'm still on the fence about him. I'm still very lukewarm, and I'll get to that in a little bit. The main criticism that a lot of people have about a Dream Theater live performance, unfortunately, does fall on the shoulders of James Labre'S, the lead singer. He doesn't have the same voice that he once did, say, even 20 years ago. And I think he's been kind of struggling to find a good balance of performing live without strenuating his voice. He does have a history of really struggling with a live performance, and this is dating back even to like the 1999 set list. At least within like a studio, he can really coach himself and really get to a point, because I did feel like Distance Over Time saw James Labre'S at a really new chapter of ushering forth some beautiful melodies when it comes to his vocal works. Obviously, he's not going to hit those same notes that he was able to hit from Images and Words and Awake. We have accepted that. But when we found on, say, The Astonishing, the 2016 release, they're still at least able to play within this new wheelhouse that they have and create very beautiful music to play in that sandbox. And so I felt like Distance Over Time was a good marriage between testing his limits without ever surpassing it. And so I was really excited to hear what it sounded like on a live set list. And I know that's a very long-winded way of opening this up, but this is like their, 10th live set? Live at the Marquise, Once in a Lifetime, live scenes from New York, live at Budokan, Score, Chaos in Motion, live at Lunar Park, Breaking the Fourth Wall. So, I mean, I'm also a diehard Dream Theater fan, so I have most of these in my collection. I've heard them all, and maybe it might be fun one day to actually rank all my favorite live sets. But now we're at the 2020 Distant Memories Live. And as I mentioned, I actually saw this live show when they came to Toronto. I saw it with my buddy Rudolph, Travis, and Shane. And the three of us just had a blast the entire time. Really, really fun to actually reminisce and remember about the good times that we were actually able to see live shows. I'm trying to distance myself from what I saw and what I'm listening to on this recording, because one of the things that I noticed was, when I saw it live, how much I actually really enjoyed James Labre'S vocal work. Like, I could tell like he was stretching a little bit. He was meeting his max, but he never overstepped. And I felt like he was really doing a good job of playing within his limitations. That can't be said here. That can't be said here. There are a number of times on this where I honestly don't even know what James is saying because of what he is doing with his voice in order to hit the notes that he needs to hit. It reminds me of this song that I've been listening to quite a bit, where it's made to sound like an English song, like an English words, but it's all gibberish. And so half the time when I'm listening to James Labre'S, this is what I'm hearing.
Wait a second, the shoes now, whole building saying that a whole red maybe get the color boss died.
So, I mean, that's kind of one of the weaker points, and some of the things that he does with his voice in order to kind of contort it to hit the notes, either by, mangling the lyrics or putting on this weird almost accent or technique. Sometimes it works, and a lot of the times it doesn't. One of the things that I love about this, though, is, again, how the Johns, John Petrucci and John Ming, as well as Jordan, so the three J's, how they're all able to play in and amongst one another. Very, very well constructed. They're a tight unit. They're all a machine. It's just so invigorating to hear these masters play the music that they love. Unfortunately, I'm still, getting... my nerves are getting up for Mike Mangini, and I know the man can play drums. I really, really do. My main issue is the style that he plays doesn't ultimately match the style that the J-Man are bringing to the table. He's able to play hard, right? He's able to play fast, but that's it. The man can play hard and fast, but we don't need a speed drummer. What we need is a drummer that's very intuitive, that's able to add flourishes, and is able to have fun with the band. And I still don't feel like Mike Mangini does that. And there's a lot of areas where the song opens up and he's allowed to add flourishes and he's allowed to add some fun, and he doesn't. It just keeps the time. And that's fine if that's the style of music that's being brought to the table, but that isn't the music that's being brought to the table on these live set lists. And this is found within most of the things that we found from Distance Over Time. Untethered Angels, Falling Into the Light, Barstool Warrior, and Pale Blue Dot, all these feel like the tracks that he laid down in the studio. I mean, I will give him credit. He can play fast and he can hit the time signatures. But that's it. There's no real personality on there. And in a live performance, I want to see that personality, and I just don't. And I don't know if that's him not being comfortable enough to put in his own personality, or if that's the band saying, no, just play the time signatures. That's it. Perfect example of this is when we get into the second set list of Scenes from a Memory. When he's playing the Dance of Eternity, the man is on time every single note. But then when we get to songs like The Spirit Carries On or Finally Free, where the song opens up and allows to have a little bit of flourishes, it just falls flat. And even when he does bring a little bit of that personality to the table within Finally Free at the end, I'm just very uninterested. Like when you listen to Finally Free on any of the Mike Portnoy, and I promised myself I wouldn't compare the two, but I'm using it as an example. When Mike Portnoy plays Finally Free on any of his live set lists, you hear him just explode, and you hear the personality that Mike has. I don't feel any personality from Mangini. And I've ranted way too long about that, so I'm going to leave that on the table, and I'm going to move on to some of the other things that I love and also don't like about this live album. So I've already mentioned some of the live performances that were found from Distance Over Time, and again, it does feel very nice. Like, I like the fact that in this new setting, there's a little bit more of an energy that's brought to the table. There's a little bit more of a fun atmosphere to it. There's almost a new life that's brought to it. Unfortunately, again, hate to beat a dead horse, but with James Labre'S and Mike Mangini's limitations, it does feel like a lot of these tracks are being carried by the J-Men. I'm just going to keep calling them the J-Men at this point. And one of the things that I really do like are some of the other tracks that are kind of threaded throughout, at least within the first half. Like we have A Nightmare to Remember, which is one of my favorite Dream Theater tracks, even though it is a little bit on the corny side at times. I love the rhythm and I love the just overall darkness that this track has. I love just grooving to it. Like, I love that like that, such an infectious groove to it. Same with In the Presence of Enemies Part 1. One of my favorite tracks from Systematic Chaos. And they do a great job of just bleeding through that brilliance that I love. Like when we have that... Like, I just love it. It's so just... I love that guitar work that we have from John Petrucci. So good. And I will admit, the entirety of Scenes from a Memory was brilliant. And I mean, I found myself crying when I saw it live, and I saw myself get emotional once again when I was listening to it in its entirety, especially when they play it live. Like the energy that's brought to the table when you play this thing live from start to finish. It's just, by the time you get to The Spirit Carries On, I feel myself just getting so emotional. And I'm just like... Once James Labre'S comes on with Move On, Be Brave, Don't Weep at My Grave, I just like... And then when we get to that just meaty outro of Finally Free, it's such a cathartic release that I can't help but just gush by the end of it. And I also do enjoy the two final tracks. We have At Wit's End and Paralyzed. And I think both of them are a fantastic way of playing it out. I believe when I saw this live, they actually closed it off with Metropolis Part 1. But I do like how they were able to finish it off with At Wit's End and Paralyzed. I think that it was a really good way of ending the live show off. So ultimately, at the end of the day, Distant Memories Live in London from Dream Theater is a good release for Dream Theater at this point in their career. I think it was the perfect choice of set list. I think it was the perfect way to honor where they are currently in their career. And I also think this is the best that we could hope for with a band such as Dream Theater at this point. Is it their best live performances? Far from it. But they also play to their strengths when they can, and I think that elevates the overall presentation of music. This is one that I would honestly give a stream to. It wouldn't necessarily be one that I would buy. This wouldn't be one that I would even download. Like, I wouldn't go out and seek it for the DVD, but this is one that, especially as a Dream Theater metalhead that I am, I would go out and I would listen to it, and I would actually recommend listening to it, especially for some of those deeper cuts, such as A Nightmare to Remember and In the Presence of Enemies, as well as listening to the entirety of Scenes from Memory. Like, you're going to be hard-pressed not to compare this to Scenes from Memory Live, the one that they put out about 20 years ago, but, I mean, this one can stand toe-to-toe with that recording, so that alone is worth the price of admission. I just wouldn't really want to invest in it if I already have the live Scenes from Memory. So anyway, that's a whole long-winded way of reviewing this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And what did you guys think? What did you think of Distant Memories Live in London by Dream Theater? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you think it's just another one of their live albums and they should have stopped years ago? Or do you think it's a great addition to a stellar live set list? Let me know all of your thoughts by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.